Hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy, and we are back with another list video I guess this is to commemorate the arrival of the PlayStation 5 next-gen consoles, Xbox Series X. We're still waiting in the UK for PlayStation 5 to hit. I know that people in the US, I'm sure you're all enjoying your consoles right now. We will be enjoying ours this week. So this is almost a spiritual successor, a companion piece to the video that we did from last week, where we were talking about the games that we'd like to be seen made into films. We are flipping the script on this one. We are doing completely the opposite. This is films we want to be seen made into games. Now, I don't know about you guys. I thought it was a really, really hard list to think of because so many films have already been made into games in some way, shape, or form. So there might be one or two on the list that you see that have maybe been made into a game in like the 80s or whenever. So we're kind of including those two, maybe to give them an update in terms of 2020 and the new technologies that are available on systems now. But before we get into our list, over to Tate with the socials.
Yes, so please comment below on this video which films you want to see made into games. We want to hear your opinions as well. We had loads of feedback on the previous video whilst people were watching along. So it's very good to hear from that. Don't forget to like the video, comment along, share the video if you can, and subscribe. We're trying to get to our sub goals by the end of the year. And if you want to find out about our upcoming videos, please go onto Facebook. You just type in Cinema Savvy and you'll find us there. Go onto Twitter, that is @cinema_savvy. And if you want to pick up a t-shirt, one which Chris is wearing today,
yes,
for example, go into the description below on TeePublic and help support our channel.
Definitely. So, guys, if you didn't join us last week, if you're watching it for the very first time, the concept is quite simple. We're doing the films we want to see adapted into games. Last week, we did games into films, and it was really good fun. It was difficult. I think last week, as Chris said, was a lot easier than this week. So we've kind of got some kind of rules in place, I guess is one way of saying it. So we've avoided out the major franchises. Star Wars, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Marvel, DC, because they've had multi-platforms. They've been films, comics, books, games, everything across all eras. So we've kind of tried to drop the biggest franchises. We're allowing franchises to a point. There are a couple on here, albeit very different when you think of the franchise. Not necessarily a big player, could even be trilogies. So we are basically coming in pretty blank. I've got concepts of the games in my head for my picks. I didn't sit there and say I've programmed, I want a company to make or anything like that. I've said this is the game I want, and this is why. It's essentially as easy as that. And yeah, it's been trickier. It's been a lot trickier than I thought it could be, actually. It's more coming up with the ideas that would this actually work as a game, and I think that's the better question. Whereas on last week's video, we knew it would work as a film, which is why we picked it straight away. But this one, you have to question the film more so than anything we did. So I thought it was really good fun.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And with this, I remember like scanning my entire DVD shelf, trying to think of picks. I know I've got 4 original picks, and then there's one that I mentioned where there's might be some bleed over that it has actually been made, but an updated version anyway. I'm going to try and compare all of my picks to pre-existing games in terms of gameplay and how it could be stylized as such with games that we may be familiar of already. So without further ado, we're going to go into our picks now. So if I go for my number 5 pick, and then if it goes George Tate, and we just go the same time that we did last time. So if I can just bring up the picture. My number 5 pick for a film that I'd like to be made into a video game is Cloverfield. Now, Cloverfield as a franchise is very open. There's 3 films currently in the Cloverfield franchise, I guess we can say. So really, you could make a video game about either of them, or at least the first 2. I still haven't seen Cloverfield Paradox, but I'm mostly going with the first Cloverfield here. You've had survival horror games where, you're beset by tons of enemies, but I've never seen a video game where you could just be a survivor in a destructible environment of a city where there's constantly just one big monster on the prowl all times. It could be in real time, like Dead Rising, where it has an actual physical timer. I think it has like 72 hours or something like that in Dead Rising, where you can just go crazy in that shopping mall with the zombies, and the idea of the game is to survive for those 72 hours. So it could be made like that. It could be very much an open world environment where you've just got to survive for X amount of time. You could have missions, you could have side quests. Or if you did want to keep it with the camcorder footage, which was like in the original film, the found footage type thing, we have had a horror game within the last few years called Outlast, which is all done from the perspective of night vision on a camcorder. I think the motion sickness would get pretty unreal with that, as watching Cloverfield actually does. But I think there's a lot of opportunities. I think you could play as the monster and just trash the city, which I think is the easiest thing to do. But I've never played a game where you are just trying to survive from like a huge Godzilla kind of monster. You know, if a Godzilla game came out, chances are you'd probably play as Godzilla. This is flipping the script. I like the idea of an open world environment. And if you want to avoid the whole elephant in the room of destroying a real life city, New York or wherever it happens to be, you could just create a fictional city. You could just create a fictional world with that same kind of atmosphere to it. With like this giant thing chasing you around. I don't know. I think it could be street level. I think it could be free roam like a GTA. I think there's a lot of possibilities. I haven't got that one quite worked out in my head, which is why it's my number 5 pick. But I think there's something there. I think something could maybe be made from that. So Cloverfield is my number 5 pick.
I like that pick, actually. I really do. I can imagine kind of being on the street and kind of being chased, and it being almost like a checkpoint kind of thing. You have to get to this checkpoint to survive. You have to do these certain things. The first film definitely follows a narrative of go to point A. Okay, we're at point A. Okay, now we got to go to point B. So it'd work in that same way. I'm trying to think of any games which have that kind of like you play as the monster destroying a city type thing. I'm sure there's some kind of
game on PS2, which was actually one of my favorite games back on the system, called War of the Monsters. I think it might be on PlayStation Now or wherever it is, where you can download all the older games. And that was good fun. That was more of in the vein of like a kaiju movie. There was a Godzilla kind of monster, a King Kong one, a giant robot, a dragon, and all the other different kinds of ones, aliens. That was really fun, and that was destructive environments. It was a PS2 game, so the limitations at the time, and you basically just had to have monster v monster. But I've never seen one where you're playing as that tiny ant in the map as these monsters are destroying the environment. So I don't know. Maybe. I don't know how it would work. I'll leave that up to the superior minds of game tech, maybe. But
that sounds good. And that's the thing with Cloverfield, is that it's a franchise that's kind of become a franchise when no one thought it could, but it succeeded in that. I think that's where there's room for it to push outwards, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
My number 5 pick is this is the one where this would be higher had it not have already had featured in many of the video games. So I am going with none other than Tron. Key word here, not the word legacy, not the original Tron logo. I am saying right now, dear whoever, Disney. Give out the rights first. Give the rights out. We need a PlayStation 5 compatible VR Tron RPG game. There is nothing more that needs to be added on top of that. You need to create a character in the grid. Now, I'm not going to delve into too much of the sort of the theory of Tron. Chris, I know we're going to be talking about that next month, which I'm really looking forward to for the 10th anniversary. It's a 10th anniversary. That's insane. However, there was an incredible animated series called Tron Uprising, which Disney cancelled way too early, starring beloved Frodo Baggins as the character on the left and the original actor of Tron on the right. So there was a really fascinating world where you took the role. He was like this kind of rookie. He's come in, and this is set before Tron Legacy. It was a prequel series, but very prequel-esque, not like a day before the film. It was, this is the world we're living in right now, and you're exploring the underworld. They're exploring the posh people, the war crimes, everything building, and you're in this city on another side of the grid, so it's not even connected to where they've been in Legacy. And there's a really fascinating idea there, but what it showed is that these films, this franchise hasn't been really touched, and there's been many arcade games. I'm sure we've all played Snake Online, but the Tron version over the years in IT lessons at school. I had the Tron Disney Infinity set when Disney Infinity was a thing, and I had a lot of fun with that. Chris, you mentioned Kingdom Hearts to me. You used to play that game, so you know bits of it, and it's kind of cheating because it has had that video game element, and it essentially is a video game, but in the sort of the modern graphics, the modern day. And if Disney are really rebooting it with Jared Leto, then at least they've still got some kind of what's the word? Like, not financial. What's the word? They're backing it to a point. They're not backing what they should have backed in Tron 3, but an RPG set in this world at any time point before or after Legacy, get it further away from the original, make it look like it does in here. I mean, that is 10 years old, and that CGI is still better than 99% of stuff we see today. There is just unlimited potential for a developer that wants to take that on board, but the key thing is VR. And I'm going to get sad to the point, if anyone's played on VR, if you can play a 2D game. So when the Spider-Man game came out, I was playing it on my PSVR. and it's basically an IMAX. It's not obviously around you; it's just a flat screen. If they could do that, and then when you go into the grid, then it becomes fully immersive. That's just icing on a plate there. But that would be higher had I not already had video games.
Can we get Daft Punk back for the soundtrack?
Exactly. It's just phenomenal. I mean, there's so much potential, and it's mental. Because not to get on a side rant, but this is in theory one of Disney's only original IPs, and it's got a very big cult audience. I know cult doesn't provide money, but when the films have been successful and they cancelled the series for no reason, they left it on a cliffhanger, which was awful because they brought in one of the main film characters' faces for the cliffhanger. There's so much you could do, and I think people would enjoy it. You could go to the games, you could do light cycle races. You know, the RPG element can let you do anything you want, and I think that's something people would be looking forward to.
Well, sign me up for the light cycle races. Racing games are my jam, and as soon as you said that, I'm like, I want to play that. I want to drive those light cycles. Maybe a bit more refined than the Snake game, which I also used to play back in the day. I think just visually, it's kind of what we did with the games into films, isn't it? We always picked those very visually striking ones, and I think that just the world of Tron, the idea of it, the imagery, and yes, it's mostly just neon, but I think that could be rendered beautifully in like a PS5 or next gen game, whatever it happens to be. A lot of possibilities. As you said, I know there have been some release where it's been more of a hack and slash kind of thing, like combat, punch 'em up, beat 'em up. I think there is something there where they could do more with it, but I don't know. Tron's just that unlucky franchise as part of Disney, so they just won't give it the chance. We had the first sequel X amount of years after the first one, that failed animated series, and then they're on about the Jared Leto one, if we ever see the light of day with that one. I guarantee maybe they'll do something with that one. Maybe we'll see something. It probably won't be as good as the ideas that we've had for it, but I guarantee we'll probably have a Tron game later down the line.
No. I do remember there was a Tron game on the Wii, but it was so bad.
Yeah.
Like I remember the only good thing on it was light cycles, and you just play that over and over because I had the multi-layer one from the actual film. But all of the other parts, like the disc battles, was so bad, so unbelievably bad. I really like the idea of having that as like a VR concept, especially with the kind of flat screen and then going completely immersive when you go into the grid. I can really see that working. I wonder whether they will tie it in if they are going to be doing another film.
And Disney can sell their specially designed Tron headsets for VR,
with
can't
Mickey
they?
Mouse
With
ears.
Sony.
Or would the Tron headset? Oh, now here's a point. Would the Tron headset look like this?
There you go. There's an idea.
You have to buy two. You get the blue one and the orange one.
Yeah.
And then if they want to go one step further, they'll just start handing. It'll turn into Ready Player One. Actually, I will say this: Ready Player One was almost on my list. The problem is it basically is a video game already, and it's impossible to make it because it's literally unlimited worlds for unlimited creations and characters. So Tron's, I guess, kind of similar to it, but there's so much potential. And we'll say this a lot tonight because films are great, and I think we three are gamers. We do like to play stuff, we play different stuff, and that echoes in the stuff we're going to go through. So keep watching, guys. But that was my fifth pick.
Nice.
Well, very interesting. For my fifth pick, I'm going for a game which I wouldn't normally, or a game style which I wouldn't normally go for or play, but I still feel like we may be even getting this game this year or even next year, and that's going to be the film Upgrade from 2018. Now, Upgrade went under the radar when it was released. A couple of people kind of liked it and commented on it for its kind of unique fighting style and its unique fighting elements during the actual film. Basically, the plot of the film, if you haven't seen it, is he gets in a car accident and he gets a computer chip put in his brain, which allows him to walk again, but it also communicates with him and also allows him to, well, fight really, really well when he engages. And it's a compelling story to start off with, but also the idea of augmenting yourself to make yourself better. You see it in games such as Deus Ex. You're probably going to see it as well in Cyberpunk 2077 coming out later on this year. I just feel like the universe that they were able to set up in this was so well done that it could easily translate into a game, especially with the fighting style that's used. I want to bring it back to this photo here. When he fights, when he punches, the camera actually tilts. I don't know whether you'd be able to do that in the actual kind of game itself, but the ability to kind of augment the camera as the fight's going on. The ability to kind of show off that fighting style would be really excellent to see on the screen. And also one other element is upgrades as you're going along. So the ability to go to different people, different hackers, be able to hack your own system and make yourself better to progress yourself through the film. And even to add to that, the bottom bit there, instead of having the word upgrade, that is actually the Japanese poster for the film. So it's already got a little unique logo to go with it as well.
Nice. So this is a film that I haven't seen. I've seen the trailer and I've seen how the camera sort of moves with the main character who is cybernetically enhanced. I think that would have to be VR. I think you'd have to sort of like put your whole body into it. Or if not, I think that the game would have to be first person. Now, I'm not quite sure how that would work in terms of combat. I know like last time you mentioned Mirror's Edge, but that's more of a platformer. There is some combat involved in it, but I haven't played it in so long. I don't know how the combat goes over in POV style like that. You know, you do have stuff like Skyrim, which does offer you the opportunity of third person or first person mode. So maybe something like that. I'm trying to think of something where it could emulate that camera movement, because I do think that's intrinsic in terms of the action style of that film and of that character. But yeah, any punch 'em up, especially if you're cybernetically enhanced, that gets a win in my book.
Yeah, I'd say I've not heard of the film, so this was quite a surprise because it, from the description, it feels very video game-esque from the get-go. And I think when you can say that, that's always good signs to come from what people would want to see from it. So that's pretty intriguing. I'm down with that.
Nice. So on to my number 4 pick. This was actually a film where, for some reason, finding pictures from it was near on impossible. So there's not many pictures. I can't really show you the whole thing of the film, but it's The Crow. Now, this is a very nice recent poster, I believe. I'm not sure if it's some kind of re-release or if it's just an artist bringing out film posters. But as soon as I saw this, I could imagine a take on this. And you don't necessarily have to make it intrinsically about the first film. You could just have the character of the Crow. It is a character, as the sequels went on, where it was basically a new protagonist each time that just donned that kind of look with it. So when I looked at that, I could immediately imagine something in the line of the parkour and free running from, say, an Assassin's Creed type of game, running across the rooftops. And that was the picture that I tried to find. The city does have this very stylized look to it, lots of reds and constantly nighttime and raining. And there's a real striking edge to it. I could imagine like a really visually interesting world and city that you could be involved in, full of crime. So the free running from, say, like an Assassin's Creed game, but from the style and maybe combat style of the Devil May Cry games, I could imagine this being some kind of hack and slash game. More importantly, sort of more of an accurate portrayal of the remake they did of the Devil May Cry games. I think they only did one remake. They completely redesigned the look of the main character. I could imagine something in the style of that. Now, with the Crow, there's gunplay, there's hand-to-hand fighting. He even fights with a sword very briefly in the original film. So I do think there's a lot of possibility there, and maybe you could integrate the guitar into it somehow as well. I love the world. It's one of the most immersive cities I've ever seen in the film, and I think that really kind of dark edge to it could really work. Not quite a horror game, but sort of that kind of gothic look to it is quite interesting, and one that I think hasn't really been portrayed very many times in video games. There's something definitely there, and I don't think you have to link it to the first film. It doesn't have to be, say, like a portrayal of like Brandon Lee, because that could go into all of the weird territories, bringing that back. But just because it is based on a comic book, you could maybe make it look more like the comic book portrayal off the panels. You could do anything you want with it. So this is my loophole pick, because there was a video game based on The Crow 2 City of Angels. So if this is a film pick, let's just say this is my pick of the first film where a video game hasn't been made. I think there's something definitely there, and with most games now going the free roam sandbox kind of route, I think there's definitely something there for The Crow. I
think this is a perfect choice, because I first watched The Crow a couple of years ago. I think it was on Film Club when we first launched it. This would be 5 years ago, people, and I know this is one of your favorite films. And when you look at, I can't remember, you'll know this better than me. I swear there are shots where it will start as like a establishing like city shot, and then it will zoom into individuals or the crows, and it feels very, very video gamey. The world as well. That's not really a criticism, but I think if the whole sort of red and black color vibes that you were showing, you can have that, not like Batman, but that kind of Arkham, like that one man crew play type game. And I think there could be some real good fun with that. And I think Crow's got big enough standing for people to jump in. So I think that would be a really cool way to, and as you mentioned, you avoid the Brandon Lee stuff.
And maybe you could just go back to it really quickly. You mentioned that POV shot. That's actually like the crow's perspective, because the two are linked, aren't they, sort of spiritually in the game? So maybe you could play as the crow and sort of spy on certain areas before you then go in with stealth takedowns or whatever it happens to be. I think that's a mechanic that would be pretty cool if utilized correctly.
Be really good to integrate it into kind of that the Arkham series kind of fight system and stuff like that. From just kind of, I'm thinking mainly Arkham City and Arkham Knight, where you're kind of going through the city and you're kind of solving your crimes and stuff like that, doing what's needed to be done as far as characters concerned. So I could easily see that immediately kind of translating into that kind of game.
Nice.
So my number 4 pick. This is my wild card. This is something I don't think many people would have seen me go for. I had a good look at my shelf, and I wasn't struggling. I was like, what would stand out as a game that isn't going to be a shoot 'em up or something that I would play? I wanted to go for something about it, something I'd have a really good time playing that I wouldn't necessarily be hyped for on launch day. And then it came to me. It had to be Hot Fuzz. The reason for this, we're in this era now where you can cross-platform, you can play with your friends. It doesn't matter if they're on computer, Xbox, or PlayStation. They've done all these advancements, so they're trying to build up that co-op thing. What's a better duo than those two? Ironically, well, in our Battle of the Brackets for Best Subless. Anyway, I want an online co-op game where you go through the story of Hot Fuzz, and you're playing it with one of your friends. You do a campaign together. One of you takes on Simon Pegg, the other one takes on Nick Frost, and you essentially do the film, but it's a bit more extended. They can chuck in side quests here and there. I think it'd be a really cool way of doing it. Now, I don't want a sandbox open map. I like it to be quite linear, but it needs to be fun enough where you can go back and maybe go around levels and go to other parts of the map and whatnot. But I think as far as it comes to modern day, it doesn't need to be this extravagant big set piece. It doesn't need to be a AAA title. This could even be in an animated, unique own art style. There's so much you could do. And when you think of co-op, you also have to think, that team. You can look at the fight scenes. There's the fight in the street. There's the fight at Summerfield. You've got the final battle. Well, it's not really a battle, is it? But you've got the final moments with the mini village. There are so many great things you could do in this game. For this film that you could put in there. I think could be mesmerizing. And I tell you what, I almost went with another wide pick. I actually almost pitched doing a Lego Cornetto trilogy. Because I don't know if that would be taking the mix too much by doing Lego, but I want that kind of aesthetic that you can just chill out, have fun with your friends. So if it all went really well, granted we're in the middle, you could even extend it out to the rest of the Cornetto trilogy. But as far as something a bit different, I think this would be a lot of fun for a lot of people, and I think you get a lot of playtime out of it too.
Yeah, and I think there's an outcry for co-op games as well, because there really isn't that many now. It's mostly just single-player games, or if it is, it's online. So an actual local co-op game, I think there's an outcry for that. And going to the Cornetto trilogy, we've seen loads of zombie games. We know how the mechanics go with zombie games. I've never seen The World's End, but as far as I'm aware, it's robots, isn't it? Is it just sort of like a hack and slash them up with robots?
It's fine.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's politely put, it was made because it had to be made, and I think even Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg said that on record with each other. Mm-hmm. It was fine. It's just not hot to me. I mean, I know a lot of people prefer Shaun of the Dead, but to me, Hot Fuzz was that epitome of this is unbelievable. And maybe that's the British bias that it was all these British things, not American stuff. But I think of the three, Hot Fuzz would be the funnest to do, surely.
Mm-hmm. So there was a game out a few years ago called A Way Out, which was a co-op game which you could only play as co-op, and you played as two prisoners who had to basically escape the prison, and then there was an entire story between them with that. So there's definitely the potential to do it in that kind of form of having two people and not really having even a single player mode. You have to play it co-op. There's definitely kind of the ability to make a game like that. And I think that one, I'm not sure, but I think it worked online as well. So you could play it with your friend online and kind of interact. So yeah, that's definitely feasible. Definitely. Okay, so moving on to my next pick. Now, this one has been put into games, but that kind of proves testament as to why there should be a game made out of it, and that is because it is 28 Days Later. Now, I'm going to rattle off a list of various different games now, which 28 Days has had a mod in, so a moderation input in because it wasn't part of the base game. So you've got Dying Light, you've got Left 4 Dead 2, you've got Armor 2. There's a list here which I could keep on going on with, like even Minecraft has a 28 Days Later mod. so many games have taken inspiration from it and decided to kind of, fans have gone and made this film into the games, but there's been nothing official. There's been nothing that's been made that is completely 28 days later or even 28 weeks later, or even adding to that, the fact that Danny Boyle is meant to be making a third film in that series. I think a game where you have those iconic fast-running zombies coming at you, kind of going through either an apocalyptic London, trying to survive throughout that, or even just kind of teaming up with people and having to survive through that kind of thing. There's been so much inspiration from zombie games over the last few years that has been taken from 28 Days Later. I feel like it's time that 28 Days Later had something for itself.
I think with a zombie game, it's very difficult to break the mold. Not to say that it can't be done, but there is a lot out there. You know, as you mentioned, like Left 4 Dead, Resident Evil, I guess, is kind of a zombie thing, or maybe it used to be. I know it's changed into many different things now. The Last of Us, fairly recently, is that sort of post-apocalyptic thing. Now, a London environment would be really cool because we haven't really seen that before. So I think if they fully recreated that, I'm sort of like thinking back to the Getaway. Was it Getaway Black Monday that was in London back on the PS2 days? I don't know if you guys remember that game. No. But I think that was set in London at the time. It was modeled after that. So something like that would be cool. It depends how you would integrate the mechanics. Like, what would it be? Would it be more of a Last of Us game where you have to scavenge for items and you meet up with people? Would it be more of a free roam Dead Rising kind of thing where you can just go crazy and just find little side quests scattered here and there over the city? You'd have to think about how to do it to make it unique, I think, because zombie games are quite dime a dozen at the moment.
Well, interestingly enough, I feel like those zombie games have taken inspiration from this film.
Oh, definitely.
That's why I wanted this pick in there, because I wanted it to have something for itself that it could say was its official kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think when you mention stuff like Last of Us, there are so many zombie games, but it's like getting the right ones. And I think with 20, it's surprising they haven't. You mentioned all the mods as well. When a game gets mod enough, that's normally a sign that someone somewhere should be thinking about making one. Granted, it's not as easy as saying it, but I wouldn't rule anything out. I'm surprised they haven't even rebooted the films at this point, to be fair. But you could
yeah, Danny Boyle did say he was going to be making one. So
it would be 28 years later, and it'll be it'll be like the actual 28 years after.
Was it 28?
We're probably getting close to there. When was the first film released again? I can't remember. Was it early 2000s?
First film early 2000s, I want to say. Wait a sec. 28 weeks. 28 Days Later was 2002.
There you go. We're 10 years ago, guys.
It'll soon come round. He didn't direct the sequel though, did he? He didn't do Months. I think that went out to someone else, didn't it? That was just was that a studio thing?
I want to say it was still made by the same studio, so I'm wondering whether he was a executive kind of producer or director on it. But yeah,
nice. Right. Well, sticking with the horror theme for my number 3 pick. My next 2 picks are actually horrors, but I'm going in with kind of like the biggest horror film here, at least to me, one of my favorites, and that is The Shining. Oh my God, as a horror game, if done right, this could be absolutely terrifying, and that is entirely down to the environment and the location. There are maps out there. There are fully rendered maps of the Overlook Hotel, and if they could recreate this in a video game, we've seen them recreate it with CGI in Ready Player One. They can do it in a video game. So, I mean, the big draw with the film itself is the sense of isolation, and that environment is key to the horror that takes place, that sense of isolation. Anything could be lurking around any corridor, any corner, and there's a horror to the stillness and the quietness and that openness of the hotel. I know there are theories out there that the hotel itself is a paradox with how it's constructed. There are certain rooms within the center of the hotel that shouldn't have windows because it's in the middle of the building, but you can still see windows outside like it's on the edge. You could mess around with all of these different things. So you could either do a actual depiction of the book or the film, or just anything set at the Overlook Hotel. Like a horror game that came out, which itself was based on Stephen King's books, was Alan Wake, which I think came out on Xbox and PC a good amount of years ago. That was a horror game based on those kind of novels that came out that Stephen King would write. Now, a game that I'm going to compare this to, and it's probably the scariest game I've ever seen. And the thing is, it wasn't even made into a full game. It was a playable demo that was a teaser for a game that was about to come out. Sadly, never saw the light of day. And that game was PT. which was a collaboration of Hideo Kojima and Guillermo del Toro. And it was, if you beat the demo, at the end, it showed a teaser trailer for what was going to be a remake, an update, or a reboot of the franchise of the Silent Hill games, which was going to have Norman Reedus' likeness. I think they probably extrapolated some of that, and we eventually got Death Stranding, which was a completely different game, and as far as I'm aware, wasn't a horror game in any way, shape, or form.
There are horror elements in there for Death Stranding.
I'm not sure. I honestly haven't seen much from Death Stranding, but they probably just utilized the technologies they had available with this. It's such a simple concept, and it's literally just, the demo is a corridor that you walk down, you hit the corner, you go through the door, and it loops you back to the same door. But just the environment, and each time something different happens, and it builds this sense of tension and horror until you eventually hit a corner, and like that's around the corner. And it's what a good horror game should do. It doesn't just throw jump scares into you left, right, and center. It builds that sense of dread tension where you are physically dreading hitting that corner as to what might happen next. If you apply that to the Overlook Hotel with The Shining, we've seen in the film all the different ghosts. You could even add some new ones into there. I just think it's one that absolutely should get made. You could even integrate the outdoor maze as well. Could you imagine being in the dark, and you're in the maze and you could get lost, and it could be like a maze in real time. The hotel itself is like a maze. So many possibilities for this one, and I would never play it because I don't play horror games. I'm terrified of horror games. I can watch any horror film you throw at me, but I'm not playing a horror video game. So this would be the greatest horror video game that I would never play. So my number 3 pick is The Shining. Oh my god, in VR, no, I'm not doing it. No.
Can we please make this game just so that we can get Chris to, just for one video, play the game and have his face cam on, because I would love to see that.
I'm not playing it. Not happening.
This is the thing, like, The Shining would be fascinating because I think it's Ready Player One that's opened a door to do other stuff with it. I know that sounds really strange because obviously we had Doctor Sleep, which looking back on, I was probably way too harsh on. Do want to see it again, but I'm sorry, now Carl's put VR. I'm not even a VR stan. I got rid of mine like 2 years ago because they all just decided not to make decent games for it. So maybe I have to buy a new one in a couple of years when they've done VR 2, who knows. But yeah, imagine doing the Overlook in that headset. Or anything, just getting the world right. Even from a weird point, you could have like the corridor. Even seeing the corridors, as you said, would be the insane way, and it would be terrifying. I can do horror films. I don't like them. I can't do horror games. I lasted like an hour on Alien Isolation. Do you remember that? I remember getting Colonial Marines. That was the worst thing there was. Like, this is pathetic. This is a shooter. And then they made Alien Isolation. I was like, this is terrifying. I can't play this. That's how you do it. But yeah, that'd be good fun actually.
Well, it's those huge open spaces, isn't it? Like Alien Isolation. That's another game I would never play. But yeah, well, that's like one thing constantly stalking you, isn't it? Whereas this would be, I don't know. I don't even know how
anything around any corner, just ready to pop out, and just it wouldn't even be a jump scare. The scare comes in that kind of build up, which is what you get from the film. I really like that idea. That'd be really immersive. Even if it wasn't VR, I still feel like it would be a very kind of game that would draw you in and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I wonder whether anyone will be able to get the rights to it or anything like
that. Carl's just exploring room 237 in VR.
Not doing it. Not happening. I'm not going to see the creepy twins in the corridor. I'm not going to see the old woman in 237. Ain't happening. Not playing it. But it'd be really cool.
So, moving on from The Shining, I'm going to unfortunately go with my boring choices because, guys, if you didn't guess by now, there was always going to be a Nolan film on here, and my Nolan film is obviously Inception. Now, a bit behind the scenes. When he marketed this film in 2010, he actually said that he'd had discussions for a video game spin-off where he could do things he couldn't do in the film, which blew my mind. This is the guy that, jokingly laughed about 3 saying, I gave them a go on one scene, who's even today come out in the news because he said, they asked him, do you hate people watching your films on their phones? He goes, well, no, because they don't go on the phones until after they've been at cinemas. It's another conversation, but Inception is the one. We think of games, we think of world building, and I don't really know what to do because I don't want an online game. I'm going to show you a photo. I need a campaign, and I'm not saying who it needs to be about. It doesn't even need to be about the guys from the films, but you look at that image there, and you can think of a video game. It's immaculate hotel that's not from The Shining, from somewhere else. And can you imagine developers like, you need to build a world, and it's essentially a puzzle, right? I'm not saying we want Inception as Little Big Planet, But the key concept of Inception is that every level is a puzzle, but there's a story weaving in between that. I think there's a really good game out there for somebody to create. I'm not going to pitch it. I'm not going to say what I want. I just need an Inception game. I don't want any online. I don't want multiplayer. I don't want you to do this with friends. I need to be one person. Tate, you mentioned Bioshock last week, which was really good. Although I might not think Nolan could do Bioshock as an adaptation, ironically, I could see something like Bioshock for Inception, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Who's going to be able to translate that? And I go back to this, and this made it like a Call of Duty map, but again, those worlds you can build. I want to be there. I don't know what it's there for, but the game can take you anywhere in the planet. You know, again, the mind-bending stuff, and I'm gonna chuck a curve in there as well. I want you to be able to design your own puzzles and upload them online for other people to download. Now, that's very, very, very insane because you're not going to get those graphics of people custom designing things. But the concept, again, it's ultimately a puzzle game with a story written in there. So do it about Inception. Don't get your main cast. We don't want them. We want to see this world being enhanced. And I think it could work. I don't know how. Don't know who could do it. But there is an Inception game to be had out there. And it's a shorter speech because it's a really obvious one. And I don't know if I can add anything else to it.
I think it would have to be a campaign. I like that idea of building things, though. I think maybe you have your main campaign, and then there's an option where you could sort of like hook yourself up to that IV drip from the briefcase, and then you've got this whole wealth, this whole library of things that people can create. I guess it's kind of like Little Big Planet, where you can create like a bunch of levels that you can just go into. In terms of the campaign, I think it would have to be plot linked. Now, it could either be the characters from the film, or it could be a brand new story, another company that have got access to this kind of technology. As they said, it kind of did fall into criminal hands, really, and there's probably a bunch of other teams off doing the same thing. If it was going to be plot related, I wouldn't want a sequel, but I think there is room for a prequel. There's that established friendship there between Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character and Leonardo DiCaprio. There's even a moment, and I forgot the name of the job, they say we run with that like we did on that previous job. So I think maybe it could even be a prequel to that. We could see something there. With a prequel, you do fall into the trap of, these characters are going to survive. So it kind of does take the tension away there. But I think a solid campaign in this world. And it's not even a criticism because I absolutely adore Inception as it is, but although it deals with dreams, it still feels very grounded. I'm wondering if in a video game, if you could open it up and you could get more out there with these crazy dream worlds and paradoxes and things that happen. So it's interesting. I think I quite like the idea of that. And it's kind of a shame that the only movie tie-in game that we've had of a Nolan film is Batman Begins in 2005. And nothing since, as far as I'm aware. So, I think Inception could work.
I'm going to throw something into this ring here with... so, in GTA 5, you have that switch system where you can switch between the three main characters. What if you had the ability to be on the top layer of the dream to start off with, just like in the film, you're driving the car, but you need the physics to change in the layer down, and that the physics do need to change in the layer down at some point. You need something big to happen in the layer down, like a kick or something like that. So you have to initiate the kick on the top layer. You then choose to select to go a layer down, and then you follow that character, and the physics have changed in that layer.
Oh my god!
You solve puzzles in that layer based on the physics that you've set on the layer on top, and then that affects the layer below. And it almost being like you don't even have to run it as like a big campaign. That could just end up being a puzzle game. Mm-hmm. And I think the beauty of this pick is that you have that ability to go for something that could be very kind of like a campaign. You're going through a story, you're kind of figuring things out and going through that universe, or you could go for that puzzle aspect and go completely like you must do this on the top layer to affect this on the bottom layer without.
I guess that would be like that would be like Portal, I guess, wouldn't it? Where there is a campaign, but each level is a puzzle.
I was going to suggest both Portal and Half-Life for both of their physics engines that they use to be able to manipulate the world.
Christopher Nolan, if you're listening, make more video games on your stuff, please. That's cool.
Cool. My next pick is actually, I'm pretty sure this film was inspired by a Nolan concept or something like that. I know the concept is a Philip K. Dick concept to start off with. However, it's a very Nolan-esque film without being made by Nolan, and that is In Time. Now, I want to immediately say, ignore the fact that the acting in this film is pretty subpar. Okay, we've got Justin Timberlake and we've got Amanda Seyfried, and they're not on their best. But I've talked about this before as just kind of talking about this film. The concept itself is fantastic. The ability to have a clock ticking on every single person in the world's wrist, and that is your life. That is also your money. If your clock runs out, you're dead. You're done. But people are able to amass massive fortunes and being able to manipulate the system, or being able to give it out to the poor and kind of spending it in that way. You can have so many different ideas running with just this one concept. I don't even know whether I'd want this as a game, but merely as a game concept would be absolutely fantastic. Having to play with your life by playing with the minutes you have in your clock. Now, this was technically made into a game, but it was made into a one single level mobile game to promote the film on iPad only. And this is what it looked like. I mean, the graphics are goddamn awful, but you've still got that clock at the top. And if a person's on the run or having to try and make it to someone or trying to just kind of solve something out, having that clock slowly running down in the top corner, knowing that that is your life, that your entire life depends on that, that's excellent as a video game concept. And I'm surprised that it hasn't been implemented into anything.
Time trials have always stressed me out in every game. So if the whole game, and I think that would work to the concept if there's constantly that timer that you're conscious of. It's like you can't even pause the game, you can't do anything, you can't pause it to go have food. You got to play that. Maybe you can pause the timer when you go have food.
You could have it where naturally, usually when you log off a game, it automatically stops and stuff like that. You kind of have that. You could really, if you wanted to be really cheeky about this, you could have it where when you log off the game, when you log back on, your time has gone down as if it was normal, and you have.
I think it could go down a small chunk, a small little bit. I don't think it could go down in actual real time. I think that'd be really, really horrible. But if the whole game was like one big time attack, I think I'd have a goddamn anxiety panic attack or something. If I'd constantly be stressing. But that could work. That could be a really cool concept. I'm not really sure.
Not as that.
I think it would be now. I think I have seen the film, but I've seen it a while back. I can't really remember it, but I do remember the concept that you mentioned. Maybe a Watch Dogs kind of vibe, maybe some kind of, because I guess it's set in the not too distant future, isn't it? So there'd be some kind of technologically advanced thing there. I think it would have to be free roam, mission based, so it definitely would have a campaign, side quests, and you could do these side quests to amass more time. And you've got to complete the game within that time. What happens if you don't complete the game within that time? Is it just game over and it puts you right back at the beginning? That's horrible.
That could be horrible, yeah.
Is it like one of those trophies where it's like complete the campaign with dying 4 times, or saving the game 4 times and get to the end without dying? I could imagine something like that. But that's the whole game. You've got to finish that without dying. I don't know. Maybe that's too mean. Maybe that's why it's only been made into one level on an iPad.
I think there's something there where you can have the pain of you have to have the game done by a certain amount of time. Done in a way which you can in theory do it, but if you're dawdling or if you're not just doing well, then you're never going to make it to complete the game and go back to round 0 every time. You could play this game for a week. You think you're there and you're 3 minutes off and you miss it by 10 seconds, go back to the beginning. It'd be painful, it'd be horrible, but that would be incredible just to see people's reactions too.
What if the time counted for the credits as well? Like you finish the game, you're on credits, but then the timer's still there and it ticks down to 0 halfway through the credits and puts you back.
It would be really good for speedrunning, and you could have it as like a GTA thing where you're in the city and you've got people's kind of timers displayed above their heads, and you can see people. You could go with a moral system. You could see a homeless person with their clock dying out, and you could donate money to them, but that means taking time off yourself. But then that might be an advantage to you in the future. There's so much to play with there.
I think this would have to be an entirely online environment. I think me and George chatted about this. Exactly. Like that whole PlayStation Home, was it called, on PlayStation 3, where you had that hub with people. Basically that concept, but on an online sandbox world. Well, I guess like any game now, like Red Dead Redemption, GTA, Rockstar are always doing that kind of thing. So everyone's trying to fuck each other over in the map, but you've kind of got to get the missions done and get that time maybe. And if someone does thwart you or does kill you, that's going to take a huge bunch of time off you. Yeah, no, there's something there, I think. So I'll move on to my, what's this, number 2 pick? Number 2 pick. So another horror game. There won't be a third horror game, I promise. Now, it was very difficult ranking this one above The Shining, but I just had more in my head a concept that you could do with it, and it was more intriguing to me, and that is The Cabin in the Woods. Very, very underrated horror / comedy, genre spin, whatever you want to call it. This game would have to be, well, first and foremost, it would be a horror. It would have horror elements to it, but I think this one would have to be made in the style of a Heavy Rain, like a David Cage kind of game, like a choose your own adventure, or even a Telltale game, where every time you play this game, you get a different outcome. And I think that would be the whole point of this. You have your main cast of characters here, so you could create a whole new bunch of people. It just has to be that kind of typical horror. The tropes, essentially, they need one person, like all the horror film tropes. That's the entire point of the film. But, I mean, this is going to be spoilers for the film now. When we get to the end, we realize that it's this entirely sort of controlled, manufactured environment with all these different monsters, hundreds of different monsters with many different outcomes. And they're all being controlled by these suit-wearing people in a business room. They have these people in like a small little sandbox environment, whether it be a cabin in the woods or wherever it happens to be over the world. And the people, the cast of characters, choose which monster is going to be unleashed upon them. So there's a moment in the film where they go into the basement and there's all these different artifacts, and whichever one they touch, each of these artifacts are linked somehow to one of these monsters. You know, there's like a little prism box which is linked to like a Hellraiser kind of pinhead kind of guy. And they eventually in the movie go with zombies. It's like zombie cannibal family or something like that. And that's what they're all betting on here. So I think a Telltale's game style where you could pick anything in that room and get a different monster, a different kind of campaign each time you play it in some way. I think that keeps the replayability, which I really like in those David Cage games, even the Telltale ones. No game is exactly the same. And you could even flip-flop between the survivors trying to survive in the situation, but you could also go to these people here where you are trying to kill the people in the map to appease the gods. That's essentially the whole film. They have to make sacrifices, human sacrifices in these environments to appease the ancient gods so that they don't rise up and kill us all. I think it would be that split protagonist kind of thing, and the choose your own adventure I think would really work well. And the Cabin in the Woods straddles the line between horror and comedy so well. It's a genre deconstruction analysis. And I think, I mean, look at those options. There's just so many. You could have hundreds of different campaigns out of this thing, and that's just in the first game. So number 2 pick, Cabin in the Woods.
I've not seen the film. However, I know a lot of the concept and that it did things differently. And as a pitch for a game, it's basically some people playing a video game on people, right? In live action, kind of Hunger Games. That's the point of we're putting it in here because we're ultimately controlling what's going to happen. So I think that'd be pretty fun. And as far as horror games go, as you said, it's more that replay value that you can do things differently, have different horror villains, different endings, different stuff, and that's what you want from games, that you want to be able to play it again and again and again. That's ultimately the goal of it, of each developer, I guess you can say. So I'd be pretty down for that, even if I don't know much about it. I think it's a really cool concept.
I can't wait for Twitch to control a game. You know how Twitch does its kind of, we control this game and stuff like that. Like they did a Pokemon series where they basically controlled all the controls for it. Imagine Twitch getting hold of controlling the monsters and having various different people playing online trying to survive the night in the cabin in the woods. I think that would be excellent. I can easily see this being a concept.
There was a Friday the 13th game that came out a few years ago where it's all online based. One person plays Jason Voorhees trying to kill all the other survivors, and the other people in the map trying to survive. So I think there is something there, but I would like more of a campaign-based game, I think, because I just want to see all the different outcomes of different campaigns with different monsters. I think that would keep it really fresh, really different, and no playthrough would be exactly the same. And that's what I want. That's why you can play a game like Heavy Rain 3, 4, 5 times and never get the same campaign.
I feel like the concept of having it as a Telltale-styled game is good, but not the execution on it, because Telltale have tried doing horror-based games with The Walking Dead, and they aren't horror games. I mean, they're adventure games, if anything. So the idea of having to make your own choices, I quite like, but I don't think Telltale would be I know they've gone bankrupt and they won't be able to make the game anyway, but as far as that's concerned, I don't think that would work. But I think the idea of having to choose your monster that you have to fight and having to make certain decisions which affect the outcome of the game, I like that concept.
Yeah.
Definitely. So I'm going to move on to my number 2 pick, which I think definitely Chris will want to chip in on it as well, because we did have a discussion about this. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I'm going to go one step further. This is Rockstar, and this is actually not a game for the trio. This is a game about Cliff Booth. The stuntman, the most interesting character in the film. Here we go. This film's going to spoilers the film. This game is going to pick up right after his holiday, where his wife is mysteriously killed or dies, and it's going to land with him getting as many GTA games do. Him arriving back on shore. He gets to LA in the '60s, and he's going to go and reinvent his career as a stuntman. You're gonna basically get a story back, which is going to go from whenever the hell we want it to go to. I want this to include the film. I want this to go past the film. Tarantino's already set up this alternate history, so why not alter things further? Why not have the core story of the game? You can go pick Leo up. You can go take him to work for a day. Then you can go chill at his. You can watch some TV, have some beers. This is everything you already get in a Rockstar game. However, you're going to have the choice to be able to have that kind of, maybe not kill everyone in the streets. Why not? We'll include it. It's basically GTA. But the Manson family are out for revenge. And that is the main campaign. There's no online. This is old school Rockstar. It's going to be as wild as Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. You can have run-ins with celebrities. You could have another Bruce Lee rematch. You can picture all those really bizarre, weird side quests you get in Rockstar games of, look at this lunatic on a street corner. Oh, they want my help? No, they're trying to set me up. Oh, plot twist, it's a Manson family member. Or you've got the weirdos sitting in the street. You can mow them all down in the car. That's what you can do. You can just go out for a drive with Leo, get those challenges, do some racing. Again, you can go to Spawn Ranch. You can kill some hippies. I think a Cliff Booth game is just perfect. You can have that whole... You don't want to do the story. You can just go live in America, 60s LA, sorry. You can put that radio on. We're going to get the full radio station. Sorry, that it's going in my head, the song to it. I need to stop that. I don't know. It's so easy to do. I know it's a carbon copy of GTA. It's lazy, and the best thing is, I reckon Brad Pitt would come back for this.
Absolute perfect pick. And me and you were kind of fighting over this pick. I know that me and you both wanted to include this on our list, so I deferred and let you have it. It's couldn't think of a better comparison. It is fundamentally a Rockstar game. I love the idea that you mentioned there about the side quests with the really wacky characters that you get in a Red Dead Redemption or a GTA. I actually would like a campaign to this. I think this should be like a GTA 5
campaign. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'd like the GTA 5 thing switching between protagonists. I'd love to go to the movie set with Leo one day. Cliff Booth just, doing like whatever it is in the neighborhood, likewise, like house watching while Leo's at work. You could link it all into this story. Now, the problem is with the whole Manson thing, would it be out of bad taste if they included that in a game? So I'm not quite sure how they deal with like the actual plot part of it, but that you had me at the driving around just listening to music, because that's one of the things that I would used to do in like GTA Vice City. The soundtrack and the radio stations were so good that I would literally just drive around the map, not even do any story missions, any side missions. I would get enough satisfaction out of just popping that game in and driving around. And with the music, the caliber of music that's in the actual film, and you could have the TV adverts as well coming on the radio stations as you get them. It's actually perfect. That, not to mention just like the setting as well, would be incredible. I can imagine those sort of GTA or Saints Row style conversations where you're just driving and the two characters just having a discussion in the car. And you mentioned taking going to, it just made me think of GTA 4, like, Nico, it's your cousin, why don't you take me bowling? And he calls you up and you have to go out and chill with your mate. It's perfect. It's a perfect pick. Even the poster, I don't know if we can bring up the poster again. Even that kind of looks like a GTA style poster.
So Far Cry has Far Cry Blood Dragon, which is a game which was kind of an extension to, but absolutely completely different.
Fantastic.
You cannot even compare it to the original Far Cry 3. I feel like this would work really well as that kind of same thing, where it's a GTA thing, but at the same time, it's completely different. It's set in the 60s. It's got all of the things that it has in it in the film. I think it would work in that respect, and I think it would be really successful. I'd play it. I'd play it even some of the just kooky and weird side missions you could get up to, given that setting, given the amount of universe that was put into that film to take you back to that era, which I don't think any game has actually done, like put you back into the 60s. We've seen people do it into the 70s, 80s, even like 40s and 30s with LA Noire and stuff like that. You've never really seen anything done into the 60s. And I think that is a kind of a massive gap in the market that could be kind of taken.
I just need more Cliff Booth and and Rick Dalton in my life, I think. Maybe some playable episodes of Bounty Law as well. Throw those in for good measure.
I mean, he's not making. He said he'll make 10 films. Why not make a game with it? Get Tarantino. You could imagine going, say, Quentin, do you want to write like 200 hours worth of video game stuff? There'll be random conversations with random in the streets. Tarantino's written like an autobiography on like Street Corner Man number 34. It would be incredible, and I think the world deserves it.
I remember there was a video game as well. Just before we move on to the next pit, it was one of my launch games that I got on PS3. It was called The Darkness. It was a horror game, sort of like shoot 'em up, whatever, kind of ghosts and whatever in there. But there was a moment where you can go to your apartment, you can put the TV on, you're watching it with your girlfriend, and I can't remember what the film is, but it plays the full film. You sat down on the couch. You can, if you wanted to, watch that entire actual feature film on the TV screen. You could have episodes from old TV shows if they got the rights to it. You could go to the movie theater. Now, I don't know what they do with that, if they could play a full film in the movie theater, or even if they just play like a couple of trailers or old style trailers.
I mean, they've had concerts in Fortnite, so I don't understand why they wouldn't be able to
trailers in Fortnite.
Yeah. I don't know why they wouldn't be able to play a full film as like an event type thing, where if people went on to the game at that certain time, they'd be able to kind of watch it.
I just think it would add more to the immersion in the world, and just chilling, watching something. That could be cool. I need this game now. Why doesn't this game exist? This is the depressing thing about this list. We're coming out with some like quality ideas with these, especially that one. Like, I need to play that game.
I mean, we're going from a kind of almost GTA-inspired game to another GTA-inspired game, and that is going to be The Raid Redemption. I mean, let's just get it out of the way straight away. We all want a raid free. We don't know if we're getting a raid free. I mean, I know that they're going to be making an Americanized remake of The Raid, and I know that Gareth Evans is going to be writing on it. But we don't want that. We don't want that at all. What we want is the raid free. And when the raid free comes out, what we possibly want is a video game tie-in to kind of go into the underbelly of the world that's been set up. The first film goes in with that tower block kind of vibe. And I think that you could easily have that as like a good start to the game in itself, by him going up the tower, completing every level and everything like that, and having to use the kind of martial arts skills that makes this entire film series so well loved. Just the brutality of it alone. Like, you could have Mortal Kombat styled fatalities with him just using his fists and his legs. Like, it would be absolutely fantastic to see. But what I really like is in the second film, they do delve into that criminal underbelly, and they go for that kind of undercover cop story and go into that kind of which side is he playing, how long does he have to play it for, having to survive in prison as well. There's so much that's been done in just these two films that needs to be explored on more. And I feel like that kind of martial arts combat style can be experienced through kind of a cool combat system. I'm thinking really the Dark Knight, was not the Dark Knight, the Arkham series with the Batman kind of combat, where you're able to kind of do that fluid kind of combat by going from this person to the next person and having to use that kind of using the elements to your advantage as well. I think that it's probably not the strongest concept on this list, but it's one that I probably want the most, just to have more raid content, if anything. Even
if they just wanted to keep it closely linked to the first film, I could imagine, I don't know how many levels they say there are in that tower block. They probably say in the film. I could see you having to go through that entire level. It could be quite an extensive level, you know, side missions or whatever on that one level. You finish that level, and then maybe you have the opportunity to upgrade your weapon or your armor, or take elements from other people, get equipped before you then take on the next level. And each level of the building could get more and more difficult. Maybe some enemies could sort of flank you and get behind you and go to a lower level and like come up behind you. So you're not always attacking head on. And I think the Batman Arkham games definitely did revolutionize combat in video games. I think, you know, like the Assassin's Creed games did pick up a lot from that as well, and changed their combat to more suit that kind of free flow style. And I think a lot of games are doing it now. I know the Shadow of Mordor, Shadow of War games have a similar combat system. A lot are doing it now. And I think to get that high level of that kinetic flow, I think you'd absolutely have to have that, and an opportunity to, as you mentioned, use the elements, use your surroundings, pick up different weapons, smash people into environments. That would be really cool, because I was thinking one of my picks was going to be a John Wick game, but I didn't put it on there because I've heard rumors that a John Wick game might be happening at some point. I think it'd have to be a similar thing for that as well. Although that one you do have more gunplay rather than hand-to-hand fighting. But yeah, I'd love to play a Raid video game. And not Raid Shadow Legends, very different game.
I think Raid's perfect. I think as well when you got Raid 2, you get all the the Raid 2 is essentially the Godfather, isn't it? It's learning about all that world, that environment. There's so much I think you can do with the Raid, and again, it's going back to that combat. And you mentioned as well, everyone's heard of the Raid, even if they don't see foreign films, they've all heard of it now because it has that legacy of oh my god, those guys from the Raid when they pop up in anything. So I think that'd be insane to see, and it'd be so well done as well.
So, I've just seen the pictures for George's number one pick. I'm not going to give it away. That's going to be fun. So my number one pick now, this is a bit naughty of me because this technically has been made into 2 video games. So it's not a completely original concept. However, I'm going to justify this. So this was made into a video game kind of around about the same time that the movie came out. There's one in the very early 80s. It looks like this very 2D, blocky, side-scrolly kind of one, which most games were at that time with the limitations. Most recently to time with the Netflix series, there was another game that was released which was more of a tactics game where you move certain blocks ahead and you're in an adjacent square and you attack someone. Very minimalistic and not really reaching the full potential. So this one, I'd want a full free roam Skyrim style game set in the world of Thra, and that is the Dark Crystal. From just conceptually, like you can go through any of the concept design from the original film, from the Netflix series, whatever it is, the art of the Dark Crystal. It is one of the most visually striking things I've ever seen in terms of its world. And I think there's just so much to explore. And the Netflix show was attempting to explore that world and go into it more. We had basically like a 10-hour movie, essentially. We were seeing so many more new things, new locations, new characters, and setting up for what would eventually become that final film. So, Dark Crystal is a franchise that has tried to find its feet everywhere it goes, and it's never quite stuck. The first film came out, and yes, it does have a cult following now, but it didn't do too well at the time. It was a very out there concept, especially for, like, is this a kid's film? Is this a young adult's film? It deals with some adult concepts to it. It's a bit scary in parts. They then did comic books and to continue the story as a sequel. And then they did the Netflix series, which was a prequel, which has sadly been cancelled by Netflix now. It's just another one of those many Netflix shows that always seem to get cancelled just before it's getting into the good stuff. So now, like the Henson Company, everything like that, they're trying to find a new outlet where to take this thing. Why not take it to video games? I just think there's clearly a story to be told there. There are loads of characters. It could be that free roam aspect, side quests. It would basically be Skyrim in this world. Just these still images right here, just the visuals, the lighting. There is so many things that you could do with this. You could make it a huge world of Thra. You could even add new places that we haven't seen yet because, the film dealt with only a few locations, but the locations it dealt with were great. We got more in the Netflix series. You can really open this up. You can do absolute wonders with this game. You could make it almost comparable to an Elder Scrolls game or The Witcher or any of these huge fantasy RPGs that come out. The combat, it's a no-brainer. It's exactly the same. It's that kind of hack and slash feel to it. And not to mention, maybe you could split it between protagonists. Maybe you could play as the Gelfling, and then you've got to throw the Skeksis in there. Surely, like maybe you can play as that more of that political intrigue side. I don't know. I think maybe it would be better served as one single protagonist, but I think you'd have to throw all the characters that we know into the melding pot. But I put this as my number one just because of what's happened with the actual franchise in real life, and it being cut short and there being more to tell, and just another avenue where you continue that story. And I think the video game's really the only one where they haven't really tapped into its full potential yet. So Dark Crystal is my number one pick, even if it technically has been made into video games already.
I would, we haven't really talked about what would kind of work best with what kind of stylization and platform, but this would immediately be probably one of the most ambitious video game projects ever. I know it's very difficult with the puppetry and stuff like that, and I don't really think that would translate into being digitalized and made into a video game. You have to keep it with the puppets, like otherwise it loses what makes it unique. And I think the only kind of gaming console, or at least the only company that would be able to probably do that and keep that style and still have that kind of story element would probably be like Nintendo and going that route, especially for kind of the age bracket that you're kind of aiming for with that kind of mid-teen and possibly even younger, possibly older, but not really being set anywhere. I think the stylization, Nintendo could probably do a Legend of Zelda styled kind of game based off that and have it as one central protagonist and have it through their journey within the universe. And I think that would work really well. But I wouldn't see it as like a AAA title that could go onto multiple different consoles, going onto like a PlayStation or Xbox or something like that, purely because the animation style, and I don't think it would fit well in with that.
Maybe it could be like a World of Warcraft type thing on PC, this online environment. I do think it needs a campaign, though. I think a campaign is key. Keep it free roam. I don't know. I just need more Dark Crystal in my life. I think that's why I picked it. But
I think it could work if you go for that animate. I hate the word animated game because it's such a loose term, but when you think of something, not Little Big Planet has been brought up already, but that kind of vein where it's kind of puppets, right? But they're animated, but it still looks like it. I think you could get away with that for Dark Crystal. Now, depends obviously on how they'd want to do it, but would that real graphics work for it? Like Skyrim, essentially, I guess we could say, and Fallout, that's real people. But I think for something like Dark Crystal, because it's timeless, because it's puppet, if they could somehow find a way to import, how the Stick of Truth, right? Rather than South Park make it a first-person shooter, they just made it a live-action version of South Park that is an RPG. If there was a way you could somehow do that for Dark Crystal, I think that'd be really interesting concepts, let alone the game itself or whatever the quality of the game is. Just taking that concept and applying it into a game would be really fascinating, I think
real graphics could work. I was thinking like a recent example was the animated Miles Morales character mask that you can get for the new Miles Morales game that's come out on PS5. There is a Into the Spider-Verse animated option where it does mess with that frame rate, and it does look that kind of like jagged 24 frame or however many frames it is from the animated film, and it feels very immersive and it stays true to that kind of animation style. So maybe they could do something with the movements that make it look like a puppet in terms of how the characters interact. I don't know. That's my number one pick anyway. I'm looking forward to
my number one is, if you haven't guessed it by now, I hope I threw a curveball earlier when I spoke on number 3, because my number one pick is Tenet. Now, I know what you're thinking. Came out a couple of months ago. Here he goes again, talking about how he lost the plot watching it. Now, I'm going to pitch something entirely dream-worthy. They say AAA titles. Welcome to the first ever quadruple A title. You have the car chases being done by Codemasters who make the F1 games. You have the online Warzone type stuff, online multiplayer being done by Infinity Ward, who redeem themselves with Call of Duty Warzone. But more importantly than all of that, take away the side bits. This is a prequel. Because it's a prequel, it's actually a sequel. And this is going to be pure graphics. This is going to be as good as you can get it. I've not played Death Stranding, but when you see the photorealistic Norman Reedus on the posters, I want the photorealistic Robert Pattinson. I need to know the story of Neil. I want this game to be a campaign written by Christopher Nolan, and it's going to be about how the protagonist recruited Neil to the Tenet program, because it's a prequel, yet a sequel. And the point of games, you want to be brought into a world of a new character. Now, we ultimately know Neil's destiny, where Neil's going to go in the future. And some games have done that really well in the past, where they tease you by your ending at the beginning and you play along to get to that point. However, Tenet is the perfect opportunity to do this, because I don't want a sequel. I'm pretty open about this now. He's got nothing more to prove. But when he spoke about Inception, this is why I didn't want to say it earlier. He spoke about that you can do things in video games you can't do in films. Gary Oldman said that as well when he played Reznov in COD 5. What a throwback. I want to be able to do levels where it's raining, but because it's raining, the water's going up, the graphics are going up, and I want them just to have this insane idea, and it needs to be playable. I mentioned I want Nolan to write it and whatnot. I want Naughty Dog doing the story. I want them to do, when you find bullets on The Last of Us and it's sporadic, oh, look, we found an inverted round, and there will be moments which you can use those inverted rounds. There is so much potential here, both for an online game, both for a campaign game. This is going to be, as I said, a quadruple A. Everything has been given the budget it deserves. The problem is, you think of Naughty Dog and their car moments are rubbish. Uncharted, rubbish. Last of Us, rubbish. Because you're watching a cutscene, you're going to have to press square when someone hits you, and it's really boring. So Codemasters, as I said, who make the F1 games, who have done a phenomenal job. Those car chases, they need to feel real. You need to feel like you're going at 200 miles an hour. You need to feel like you're reversing at 200 miles an hour. Bring them in. They've made the F1 game better than it's ever been in the past. There is a world out there for us to do. I'm going to go back to the online, because I feel disgusting bringing a photo up, because that is an image we have all seen. That is a film. That is the explosion at the top fixing the explosion at the bottom. You can see it online working. I went on Warzone. The reason this is number one, this probably would have been number one a week ago. I've been playing Warzone non-stop for the last 2 weeks. I've not played Call of Duty in sort of 6-7 years. and I've already picked up the next one for my PS5, which is sitting in the corner of my room for Thursday. I've totally back into this, and the moment I stepped foot on that giant map, I just thought, oh my god, the bullets sound like Tenet. Now, that's because obviously Tenet's realistic sounding guns, and as it's Call of Duty, but that kind of opera siege at the beginning, when those bullets are in the corridor and it's loud and it echoes and it hurts your ears, that's what I was getting. I just sat there like, I need to be able to play Tenet online. I wanna go around with a squad of 5 friends. I don't care if it's inverted or not. You can do some inverted levels, you can do some real levels, but that's kind of the shooting online aspect. Ranking up would be absolutely insane to do. So that is my wild, not in depth, just the ultimate dream is a Tenet video game. It has to be made and it would work, but it needs to have a campaign worthy of a follow-up to the film. Again, I'm going to end. It needs to be telling the story of Neil and how he became a member.
See, this is why I do think there's actually room for a sequel film, because it is, as you said, it's both a prequel and a sequel at the same time, and I definitely think there's more room to mine in the Tenet world. But a video game, we were chatting about this a little bit because I love the concept of it, and now I'd want the difficulty on this game to be through the roof, a difficulty that is really, really incredibly difficult to master, but once you have, it's incredibly rewarding. I want there to be, when I was trying to think of his name, then I realized he's just called Protagonist. When the protagonist goes through the turnstile and first enters the Tenet world, he's trying to learn how to run, and it kind of looks a bit awkward and weird. He's trying to learn how to drive, and it's this really steep learning curve before he actually goes and does it. I want there to be an opportunity where it's almost like a training room, like a training environment, where before you even play the game, you'll have moments where you do play it conventionally, but then when you do have to go into that time flip, it is a skill that has to be learned. It's like Guitar Hero. When you first get that, you can't jump straight onto expert. You've got to progress and get good. You've got to earn that expert status. I want that to be the same thing here, and I think that would put a lot of gamers off. I think they just want to be able to play it, no muss, no fuss, but I want the actual controls to be inverted. If you want to walk forward, you've got to pull back on the analog stick. If you want to accelerate forwards, you've got to hold back, and it's like it's like L2 instead of R2. Maybe in the conventional timeline it's R2 to accelerate, in the reverse it's L2 or something like that. I'm a PlayStation gamer, so all my controls are going to be related to PlayStation, I'm afraid. I was even thinking just then about the hand-to-hand combat. So, with like the Arkham combat, if there's an enemy over there, you'll move the analog stick and go over there. With certain punches, you have to pull back in the opposite direction. All the controls would be inverted. Now, I've played games with inverted controls. I think it was even the Arkham games where you're gliding and the game starts with them inverted, and I have to pause it, go to the settings, like, what the hell's this noise? Like, I'm going to change this back to up is up, down is down kind of thing, or whatever it happens to be. But I would love that kind of, you have to work at it gameplay to get it down. But once you get it down, it's, you feel like an absolute boss for like pulling off all these combos or whatever it happens to be. I would absolutely love that. And the last thing I'll say about the online is, we were talking about the idea of the red team, blue team, and how that would work. Now, I don't think you could have 2 of the same match happening at the same time, because we don't live in the Tenet world. We would have to play it once, and then it would have to be like an action replay. So maybe you boot it up, you go into an online match. It's kind of like Fall Guys, where it throws you in with like a bunch of people, starts the match. You're on red team and you play it conventionally normal in forward time. It then reloads that map, and maybe you can still see like the ghosts, like the faded holograms of yourself on the map doing the actions you just did, and you replay the map but from the other team, and can set things up from that. I don't know how it would work. The concept so far out there.
So
blowing my mind to try and think about it right now.
The idea that I had in my head, because I quite like the idea of having like a campaign and then also having a separate multiplayer kind of thing, like the COD games have had. This one would be a very, very mind-bendy. But recently there's been a massive kind of uptick in the number of battle royale games. So I think there are team-based battle royales out there where it's like 50v50. And I think that would kind of work. I know Battlefield did that and it was really well received. The problem is you've also got to try and figure out those kind of the inversion kind of how would you get inverted and stuff like that. So I think it should be kind of a part of the map where you can invert yourself, or you can choose to be inverted, or choose to be the correct way around at the start, and it's 50v50. Just go for it and just see what happens, and have that entire thing play out.
Yeah,
in terms of like maps as well, you think of COD where they can't get the mechanics right. One of your maps is set in the inverted world, and it will be like the environment's inverted. Maybe the controls would be inverted, but I want that for the campaign. But from an online perspective, if they can't make that technology to have an inverted versus verted, obviously it's impossible to do. Then you just have to apply. One match you will all be inverted, and it's just the way that map is designed for, the guns are designed for, and there'd be something really fascinating, really intriguing, messing with your head. And if it works, there's only one man who can make that. I said, well, write it, I guess, if you've never seen make a game before. But if he paired with the right people, there is potential for Tenet. And I think it needs to be, again, going on to Warzone, go and play COD. It's the final battle of Tenet. Now you get to drive around your vehicles as well. You just get to run people over. It's just it's almost pre-built now. It needs to be done. And this guy has advocated games. As we said, he tinkered with the idea of Inception. That's more than most directors have probably ever done for games. So let's get him signed up.
And the final mission in the film is 10 minutes, isn't it? I could see a 10-minute map, and then you repeat it another 10 minutes, 20 minutes in total. That could easily work as like one sort of online session. Yeah, no, absolutely. I need this game, and I need number 2 pick, please. Whoever's watching this, get making it. I can wait.
Okay, and my final pick is going to be another film by Joseph Kosinski. So when we made this, we'd obviously kind of compared our list and everything like that. And he's quite a decorated director. I didn't actually realize looking into his stuff. So he's actually he did the Gears of War Mad World original short, which you could say would be a film that could be turned into a video game. But I remember that advert coming out. I was absolutely blown away by it. He's also made Tron Legacy, and he has also made the film Oblivion. Now, Oblivion is a film which I think honestly has gone under the radar. I think a lot of people, when they think of Tom Cruise films in kind of like the mid to early 2000s, they immediately think of Edge of Tomorrow or Live, Die, Repeat. But Oblivion was the film that came out the year before then, and I honestly prefer Oblivion. I do kind of have to spoil the film here a little bit, but the entire plot of Oblivion is that he is the last man left on Earth. He is left with an assistant who is up in basically a skybox. They live in kind of this little hub in the sky, and his job is basically to go and fix the planet until it's habitable again. And there's those different things. Even in the film itself, he does side missions. He goes and explores caves. He goes and explores libraries. He goes and explores the ruins of New York. And as kind of a lonely person wandering the wasteland, having to do all these things, just menial tasks, it would be just fantastic as an open world game to go through that abandoned New York, going to see the sights, going to do the different things. And then you throw into it this little thing, which I don't think has a name in the film, but the glider that he actually rides in, which can kind of move in literally unilateral direction, literally go anywhere, like multilateral direction, sorry. And the fact that he also has kind of these little kind of drones, which he helps fix towards the start, but some of them start to go bad. They start to attack him. You have the last remnants of the human race still left on Earth, and you've got that entire thing as well to deal with. The fact that he is a clone, and that he is Tech 49, and there is possibly thousands of other versions of him, which are across different zones, and there's different kind of things in those different zones to explore. There's so much to do here as far as the game concept. And I mean, I adore the film so much just for the visuals alone, but I could easily see it being ported across into that kind of open world game where you have to basically survive in the last days of Earth in the sky.
I believe this was a film that... Oh, sorry. Tayte, you came over many years ago, and I believe we watched this film, didn't we?
Mm-hmm. We did.
I've only watched it that once. Just the posters alone, that single lone protagonist back to the camera, some kind of destroyed environment. I can absolutely see that in a video game. I think we've mentioned this a few times, actually. Death Stranding, I'm thinking of, because although I haven't played that game, from what I've seen of it, it is that very relaxed open world. You're just delivering things across landscapes and trying to navigate it and explore places. So something like that. I think you would probably have to action it up as the film does as it gets into it. But Yeah, and you'd have the vehicle things. I think the map would have to be huge. But games are going that direction now. I haven't seen the new Assassin's Creed game, but I'm imagining that the maps to those games just keep getting bigger and bigger. So I think it can be done. But yeah, that could be cool.
I think as well, Joseph Kosinski, I don't think he finished it, but he was going for a degree in architecture before he did filmmaking. That's why when you think of that, you think of Tron, think of Oblivion. It's those world building stuff, and that's why he's been able to separate himself. I'm looking forward to seeing him in Top Gun. Direct that. Obviously, it's a bit different. He can't design worlds, but he's got Tom Cruise in a real plane on IMAX, so we're going to get to see that. But I think as a game, it's perfect. It's got those Fallout vibes. It's the one man wondering stuff, and I think there's also Oblivion is massive. I've only seen it once, and it's massively underrated. There are some. I think the biggest issue was the marketing. They marketed something that didn't happen until the end, which I'm not going to say in case people haven't seen it. But I think there's a story there. There's a world there. And I think that's a platform for people to push on with. And I'd be really intrigued to see that. That's a really good choice, actually.
Well, along with that, you've also got those kind of moments within the film where he has tension with his kind of control command, and then they kind of make up and stuff like that, and they have their own little kind of place in the sky. But he even has his own quiet place down on the ground where he collects like Earth memorabilia and stuff like that, which you could have as like a quest. I mean, in these video games, you have all these little Easter eggs of people collecting things and not really having any effect on the story, but just being a collection of things that you have towards the end of the game. I think having that as an element as well would be absolutely amazing. But even if it doesn't... Yeah, go on.
I was going to say it could be like a collectible aspect, collect X amount of whatever. It could be a crafting system. You could upgrade your glider maybe, whatever it happens to be, your equipment based on the things that you pick up from the ground.
Interesting enough, in the film, he collects vinyl, so you could improve on your soundtrack whilst you're going in the sky as you go through the game, which would be a really nice element. But I think it's such a kind of... It's not a unique idea. It's been done before with these different games, but I think the world that's been set just from the film alone is big enough, and you don't even have to follow the events of the film. You could just have it as that kind of lone wanderer thing going off, and even have it as set as one of the other techs. I mean, we get to Tech 4.9 when the film comes round, and we see Tech 5.2 as well. There's could be thousands, there could be millions across the entire planet. You could set it in a different city, a different place completely, where the techs don't come across each other. There is so much that you could do there.
Absolutely. I think we've pretty much, we've gone through the whole list now. We've gone through all of our top 15 combined picks. I think we'll round off then because I think we were pushing 2 hours on the last one, weren't we? This will complete our companion piece to the video game reviews for now, I guess. Maybe there might be something that we can think about later on in the future, but that'll do it for our video on films that we'd like to be seen made into video games. Big thank you to Carl in the comments who's just watched the video. I really hope you managed to get that console, man, because I know that you were mentioning having problems getting that. He's also posted some ideas as we've gone through, mentioned Looper. That would be a very, very good, and I even put like Edge of Tomorrow. Yeah, anything like that would be great. So yeah, we'll pass it over to you guys now watching this. Let us know some other video games that you'd like to, films that you'd like to be seen made into video games. And this is going to be a very, very full week on the channel in terms of reviews and content that we've got coming out. So tomorrow at 10 p.m. GMT, we have our review on Rocky 3. Very much looking forward to talking about that. Conversation last week was great. And at the bottom, as you can see sliding across there, we have Lego Star Wars, the holiday special, screening, watch along, reaction, review, everything combined. We haven't seen before. It's going to be on Disney Plus, and we're going to do a live watch along of it. So it could be great. It could be awful. We're just going to watch it, have fun, hopefully, if it's good, and talk about it and enjoy it as we go through. We will have Thursday off. It's like saying like a day off. And then Friday, we'll have Mandalorian review as normal. All the content this week, 10 p.m. GMT. So it's going to be very full on. It's going to be fun and a lot of varied content there. So once again, for the socials, I need to bring it up. There we go. So Facebook at Cinema Savvy as usual, Twitter at Cinema_Savvy. And if you'd like to pick up one of these really cool t-shirts, we have 3 designs on there now. Go to the TeePublic link in the description down below. This was a really cool discussion today. So we'll see you guys on the next video.